What is going on, everybody? Good afternoon. Hope things are going well. And I know what you're thinking right now, or what you might be thinking. You might be thinking that I already made a video about this. I already talked about this not even a week ago. So what has changed? Well, little bit's changed. Little bit has changed, and I generally don't make videos about things like this because it's this social media drama stuff that isn't really often doesn't really mean all that much, doesn't even really mean anything. It might literally not mean anything, by the way. It could just be people misinterpreting his actions. But there are some things that have happened with Geno Smith in the last several days that I think are worth going over, so we have all the up-to-date information. And I want to talk about this a little bit more from a slightly different angle. I want to talk about this stuff from an alternative perspective as well, because now we know where it's coming from. So, according to a handful of sources out there, I've seen this from a couple different places now, because you guys might remember that last week there was a report that the Seahawks and Geno Smith were discussing a contract extension. Well, it would seem that the conversation was instigated by Geno Smith and his group, and the Seahawks were just the ones listening, not the ones who were actively pursuing an extension for Geno Smith. So that has to mold the conversation a little bit. I did say in my initial video that it seemed like it was coming from Geno, but now it seems relatively confirmed that this was Geno Smith going to the Seahawks and saying, hey, let's talk extension. So that happens. Obviously, there's no extension, because if there was, we would have heard about it. And some people have noticed that Geno Smith has done kind of the modern athlete thing, where he scrubs his social media of any reference to the team. And in this case, he actually scrubbed his whole Instagram account. He took down all of his posts, and he's basically distancing himself on Instagram from even being a quarterback in the NFL, much less a member of the Seattle Seahawks, it seems like. He's just Geno now, and I don't know, I guess he likes art. It's notable, right? But this is pretty common right now in sports. Athletes that want new contracts, athletes that want contracts in general, they take to social media and they do these little passive aggressive things trying to make it clear that, hey, I would like some money. So could it be that he did that because of this? For sure. That being said, there could be some other angles to it as well. He could have done this because he decided that he thinks all of his Instagram videos and pictures look ugly, and he wants to get like Botox and then retake the pictures and put those up so he can look better. Maybe he did it because he lost a bet. Like, I don't know. There could be other things as well, right? I'm not going to act like this is the only thing going on here, but it seems very reasonable to conclude, at the very least, that he does want an extension. And Jordan Dejani here on CBS Sports has an article breaking down the pros and cons of extending Geno, and I've already gone over my view on it. I think it would be a pretty good idea. I don't think that it would be bad, at the very least, right? I would prefer to get him extended now because of how I think this upcoming season is going to go for him and how much I think he's going to cost next year. But at the same time, I got to look at this from the other side as well, where what probably happened here, what I'm guessing happened here, is that Geno Smith is looking back at last offseason, thinking about the contract that he got, the basically 3 years, $75 million with some incentives. And then he's looking at what Daniel Jones got. He's looking at what Derek Carr got. He's looking at what Kirk Cousins, coming off a devastating injury, got. He's looking at what all these quarterbacks got. I could go on and on down the list. Jordan Love, Tua. And he's like, man, I took a lot less than I could have gotten. I took a lot less. And again, we don't know why he did that. He did it, and I've spent a lot of time talking about the fact that he did it. Why did he do it? Some people theorize, and I'm not promoting this theory because I don't believe it, but there's a theory that he gave the Seahawks a big discount because he felt like he owed it to Pete Carroll, because Pete Carroll was the guy who gave him a chance when nobody else would, and he delivered. So in Geno Smith's mind, he's like, well, for Pete, I got to take this discount so I can stay here with Pete. Now that Pete is gone, Geno might be thinking, well, now I don't feel obligated to give them a break because Pete Carroll's not here. Now, that's to a certain extent understandable. He's not asking to get overpaid. He's asking to get fairly paid. On some level, I can understand that. At the same time, though, when you sign a 3-year contract, which is what he signed last offseason, you should expect that you're going to have to play on that contract for 2 years. Maybe 3, but usually 2. We'll call it 2. That's the way it is. Now, I think more realistically, Geno Smith just picked his head up this offseason and is like, man, this is getting ridiculous. Like, Tua got paid double what I'm getting paid. And I'm better than Tua. I think he's better than Tua. I think he's better than Jared Goff. Maybe not in terms of like straight numbers at the moment, but in terms of who I'd rather have Geno than Jared Goff or Tua. Both those guys got paid like double what Geno got, and Geno's probably thinking, I got to do something about this. He's already 30, 34 years old, right? So, again, I sympathize with that. I empathize completely, but there's other considerations here. This is not just the team being completely liberated to decide to go one way or the other with the contract. It needs to be remembered here that there is bonus money going on here where there is holds on the salary cap from his signing bonus that he got when he initially signed the contract with the Seahawks that cannot go away with an extension. Yeah, there are parts of this contract that go away if he signs an extension. The base salary stuff, you can reset those completely and mold them to the new contract. Yeah, but there's some bonus money here that is still going to be owed. So when you combine what is going to be owed with the bonuses on a new contract with the new contract itself, you're putting the team that is already not in the greatest financial situation. You're talking about a team that is very, very strapped for cash this year and next year. It would take a lot for it to be much of a salary saving move. You could maybe do it, but then you're reopening things up next year to where things are already tight, and you're making things tighter because the cap it next year combined with the bonus, I mean, it's probably not going to go down by that much, and it could, in theory, go up. So, at a certain point, I'm not saying that every player needs to honor their contract at all times. There are certainly situations where a player should feel like I should not have to honor this contract. Especially when you get to like the final year, but you got to get to that final year. And in this case, it's very similar to Russell Wilson, where Russell Wilson signs a monster extension with the Seahawks. At the time, it was monster. Like, what was it, 35, 40 million a year. And then he comes out the next offseason and insinuates he wanted a trade. Well, we can't trade you because the contract you signed means we're going to eat obscene amounts of dead money. Like, this is your fault that we can't even consider this. And of course, players don't want to hear that because the owners are much, much wealthier than the players. But it's kind of a similar sort of thing. You can't do stuff like that. And also, the Seattle Seahawks, whether or not I agree with it or not, they're pretty militant about not extending players until they're in the last year of their deal. Like, I think that it would be beneficial to extend Metcalf and Geno now with 2 years left on their deal because I think they're going to be long-term parts of this team, and I want to get it done now rather than later. But at the same time, this team has shown a complete unwillingness to negotiate until there's a year left on the deal, and they've done it for players who are better than Geno Smith, more important than Geno Smith. Like, Cam Chancellor wanted a relatively insignificant adjustment to his contract in 2015 with 3 years left on his deal, and the team told him to pound sand. He didn't show up until game number 3 of that season because we weren't having it. Russell Wilson floated an extension desire with 2 years left on his deal right before we traded him, and we were like, beat it. You just had the worst year of your career anyway. We're not taking care of you now. Come back in a year. So we didn't do it then. And part of the reason why you didn't do it with Russ is you probably were concerned that he wasn't very good anymore, and you ended up being correct there. But that wasn't the case with Cam Chancellor, right? That was actually a line in the sand moment where you just were like, I don't care how insignificant your request is. I don't care how easy it would be for us to do. We are not going to establish that precedence. No, you do not get to redo your contract when it just started last year and you've still got 3 years left on it. Now, I think that it would still be a reasonable idea to do this just from the pure sense of being practical, because I think the price tag is going to go up significantly next year if you try to do this. However, that assumes that Geno Smith is going to be willing to work with you here. And we don't know what his mentality is. For all we know, his mentality is, I already gave you a break once. I'm not giving you a break again. I want to get paid the way that Kirk Cousins and Jared Goff got paid. Like, maybe that's his mentality. And if that's the case, then there's no incentive. You got to at least make him play out 2024 and then see what's up next year when it's time to have that discussion. But if you're going to skip the line and get your extension a year early, you better be willing to make some compromises in what you're expecting, right? So it would need to be done in a way that allows for the team to save money versus market value, and also not experience a significant raise in the cap hit this year or next year. And that's kind of another piece of this as well. If this conversation was happening a month ago before the Draymond Jones, well, I think maybe even more than a month ago before the Draymond Jones restructure, that'd be one thing, right? Because then you could be saying, okay, we're doing this for a reason. We're doing this for a clear purpose. We are doing this because we need to save cap space so we can structure this contract in such a way that the big cap hits don't hit until 2026 and beyond. So 2024, we bring the cap hit down from 26.4 to something much less, to where at the very least we're saving a little bit of money after the bonus is accounted for. And then 2025, we also take the cap hit way down so we can deal with the fact that the bonus money is still going to be lingering potentially at that point. I think 2025, it would be pretty negligible. So you could just say we just need to take the cap hit down. Like, if you can do that, great. But it needs to make sense. Like, if Geno Smith is out there asking for the same contract that he would get after a really good year in 2024 next year, what's the incentive, right? And we also have to weigh risk versus reward, because there's no guarantee Geno Smith is good this year. There's no guarantee this offense works for him, and there's no guarantee we even want him around after next year. Like, you guys know that I'm very pro Geno, but things can change, right? I was pro Russell Wilson at one point, and then things changed. So if he's out there saying, I want $45 million a year on an extension, yeah, that's technically under the market value that some of these other quarterbacks got, but not by that much. And how much more would it be next year? Like, would it go up to like 50? Maybe I'd be willing to risk that if the alternative might be that you just fall off and then I don't give you anything. That's kind of the game here. So it depends on what he's looking for. My previous stance on a Geno Smith extension was contingent on him giving the team a break because they're taking care of him early. If that's not the case, then I don't know what the incentive is. At a certain point, you just have to look the other way and go, well, I guess we're just going to play this out, and maybe we're taking a little bit of a risk. But there's a big difference between taking a risk for 5, 6, even $7 million a year and taking a risk for like $20 million a year. I don't know which one it is. All right, so is there still a way to get this done? Yes. Is there still a way I would want to get this done? Absolutely. But it depends on Geno Smith's mentality. Let me know what you think. See you guys later. Go Hawks. Maybe this will be the last Geno Smith extension video for a while. Maybe we'll extend him and then I'll actually talk about it like that. But yeah. Go Hawks. See you guys later. Maybe another video coming later today.